Hello and you're welcome to the Big Tech Show with me, Adrian Weckler. Now, this episode, we're going to take a look at what's happening in the US, who's rising, who's falling, and try to predict what's going to happen over the coming year. We're also going to look at a few things that are happening right now, like the Californian billionaire attacks. I'm delighted to talk today to The Guardian's US tech editor, Blake Montgomery. Blake, you're welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so before we get into predicting who might win and lose over the next 10 to 12 months, a couple of things from this week. How is the Grok issue going down in the US? There's a lot of protest and unhappiness this side of the Atlantic here in Europe. Is there a reciprocal feeling over there in the States?
There's not. The reaction on in Europe is much stronger than it has been in the US, which is unfortunate for like the victims of Grok
Hmm.
because Grok is like Elon Musk lives in the US, pays a lot closer attention to US regulators than he does to European ones. And there have been a few US lawmakers who said this is bad, you need to change it. But the reaction has been so strong globally that eventually, after 2.5 weeks, Musk took notice and he's kind of dialing back
Hmm.
Grok's capabilities to undress people, including children.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so he's starting to take notice of the global chorus. I mean, you saw like Indonesia, Malaysia banning the app entirely, all these European regulators saying we are investigating and we're going to penalize you probably.
Yeah, and he's doing so fairly unenthusiastically. He's kind of limiting it to technical details such as, the restricting image editing of undress where it is illegal, using that kind of frame of
Mm.
words. But why, I wonder, isn't there the same feeling in the States as there is over here? I mean, I thought particularly for the more conservative Republican end of things in the States, they always made a big deal about protecting kids online,
Mhm.
and we don't seem to hear that in this instance from them.
No, I mean, it wasn't even a month ago that the US was kind of in apoplexy over the Epstein files and protecting children and a great ring of pedophiles, which, like Musk himself has said quite a lot about. He accused Donald Trump of being in the Epstein files. Um, but it it just reads as kind of deference to a really powerful person. There are elections in the US in November. Musk is set to be a very large scale political donor for Republicans. If they are if they upset him, he might not give them money. And he and
Hmm.
Donald Trump have reconciled now, and are dining at Mar-a-Lago together again. So that's possible. Why sort of more liberal lawmakers haven't made a big issue of it, that's less clear to me, honestly. It seems like a pretty easy target for them. And they don't have a lot of wins these days, the liberals in the US. So it's surprising that they haven't made it a bigger deal, gone after him, but they are just sort of
Yeah,
not in power in the US at
yeah,
the moment.
it's really interesting. And over here in Europe, what it has kicked off is what seems to be another round of people and proponents saying that we should tighten restrictions in general on social media platforms and on AI, and I think X might have given them an open door into arguing that, and there are pros and cons to that. But one of the interesting byproducts of this, and this is starting to become a thing here in Ireland, maybe in the UK as well, but I don't think so in the US, is there's a small wave of people and political parties who are now quitting X. Now we see this every so often when some scandal hits. Now we're seeing it again. I ended up writing a piece last week, a long piece, as to why I was staying on X, holding my nose to staying on X. And I understand why people would disagree with that. But my argument essentially was that there's so many utilities on it, including the police, the fire services, train bus times, all the political parties, all the main media organizations, that at the moment it feels like it's still worth staying to try and fight for its soul. That was the argument I made. I would understand if people disagreed with me. What's the sensibility, do you think, over there? Is there even a debate about it?
Well, all the main media organizations except the Guardian, we
Yeah.
quit last year. but the sensibility is that it's a right-wing social network in the US, and X is kind of like most influential function in the United States has been for politics. There are kind of niche communities that still gather there. It's the only major social network in the US and I think the world that still allows for like graphic pornography. So that community is kind of there and
Which, by the way, and
not going anywhere.
I saw The Verge called out Apple and Google on this about a week or so ago, and I think many of us have put questions into Apple and Google, haven't really gotten very far as to
No.
why both X and also Grok have 13 plus or PG ratings in the App Store. That's the kind of thing that nobody really wants to talk about, right?
No, and I mean, you asked about the reaction to Grok in the United States, and the reaction from lawmakers has been muted, and the reaction from the de facto tech like regulators of the two big app stores has been even quieter.
Mm.
I mean, it has been this open secret for a long time that X allows for graphic pornography, and the app stores don't. But that social network is grandfathered in, and now that issue is coming up again, and it's even worse because it's undressing children.
Just before we move off this, you mentioned The Guardian did quit X. Do you think that there are any? There, I presume there are no regrets at this point having done that.
No, I think to the Guardian's executives, it looks like a more correct decision, even now. I think to your point about emergency services and getting information, I find X less useful for information than it used to be. But you are right that emergency services haven't moved. It was something I was trying to track on Threads a long time ago
Mm.
now. Because I saw a few services migrate there, mostly Californian emergency services. I think,
Yeah,
first mover, it's close to home, they're kind of more perhaps more familiar just by virtue of being near Silicon Valley, but I haven't seen a lot of it. The New York City subway authorities, like they've moved there, and I use that to kind of check for train delays and stuff. But by and large, that function has just dispersed and
mm.
gone because some not as many people use Twitter anymore or X, and so some emergency services have just stopped their service on any text-based social
Yeah.
network.
It's really interesting over here. If there's a storm, if there is a delay, if there's a crash, if there's some sort of warning, X is still the one place where government, utility, and state services all seem to pile in, and therefore it's very difficult to shift, at the moment.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, just, just moving on, you were writing as well about the billionaire tax in
Mm-hmm.
California, and there are a number of billionaires who are unsurprisingly are not very happy about it. Just at a very surface level, explain what this is.
So it's a proposal to vote on a billionaire's tax in November. It's not in effect yet, but it's causing big waves. So basically, it's one time 5% or so tax on any individual who's worth more than $1 billion who
And
lives in
it's on your
California.
assets.
Yes.
So
So
if
if
you
you're
have a
worth $20
billion,
billion,
yeah,
you would pay $1 billion.
well, okay, which
Yeah,
is quite a
and
chunk of
on total,
change.
a lot of money. But also they have 5 years to pay it. And one of my colleagues pointed out that probably the growth of their net worth would erase that tax if over time,
Yeah,
if the U.S. stock market keeps growing as it is. Um, so anyway, so big name billionaires are decamping from California in advance of the potential of this being voted on. But also the governor of California says he's going to scuttle it. He's not in favor. But
that's
if it
Gavin
gets voted
Newsom.
on, it's Gavin Newsom,
Mm.
yeah. If it, but he doesn't have veto power over it. He needs to kind of scuttle it before it gets voted on. But the founders of Google have moved a lot of their uh, kind of LLCs, companies like outside. Peter Thiel is kind of always a bellwether for the tech industry, um, opening offices in Miami. Elon Musk is encouraging other billionaires to leave California. He already left. Um, and yeah. So
And
we're seeing a billionaire exodus. The founder of Nvidia notably said, "I don't care. I'm rich enough to weather attacks, and I
yeah,
like living in
isn't that
California."
amazing? Isn't
I
that
thought that was
amazing?
pretty
Yeah.
funny.
And
Yeah.
that's the world's richest company still. But you're right, yeah. It's Larry Page, the second richest man in the world, apparently, at the moment because of the surge in Google. But this will pass, will it?
With
The
what will
law,
pass? Which
the law will pass.
Oh, it's honestly not clear. I mean, it seems like a popular thing to do, but the billionaires are giving millions of dollars to to fight it, to in kind of advertising, political campaigning. I don't think it's clear that it will pass.
Okay, okay. So imagine how foolish Larry Page is going to feel when he's sitting down there in hot and humid Miami when he could have been sitting in balmy San Francisco. Let's talk about. I mentioned Google there. One of the things that is really interesting about 2026 is the market seems to have determined that Google, of the non-Nvidia tech giants, has already won the AI war. If you look at the market cap, I looked at it before we came on air here, and Google has now gone over $4 trillion in market cap, more than Apple, more than Microsoft, two and a half times that of Meta. Do we think? Do we think that that's going to continue?
I think for at least the foreseeable future, yes. I mean, Google has really advanced AI. By some metrics, Gemini is stronger than ChatGPT, and unlike ChatGPT, it has this huge range of distribution points. Like already this week, it's changing Gmail. It's debuting this thing called personal intelligence that can gather up all of your kind of inputs from across your life, which your life is distributed across Google products, or mine is, and give you some insights into that. And its cloud division is growing like quite quickly. Used to be this sort of backwater, back burner business. Um, so all signs point to strong growth, at least for the foreseeable future, and it seems to be like ahead in the race.
Yeah, I mean, that idea of being able to gather stuff from disparate points in your own personal stack, your phone, your computer, your email, your, I don't know, your shopping habits, and being able to intelligently, usefully, and helpfully present you with something, that's kind of a holy grail, isn't it?
Yeah, that's like what we saw in movies as kids and kind of believed robots could do. And instead you end up with Siri. Like,
Yeah,
come on,
I
what
know.
a joke. So, and I mean, that's a big part of the surge this week, anyway, is that Apple finally sort of acknowledged that Siri is bad and said that Google's Gemini is going to power an upgraded version of it.
So
And
basically,
the,
just so we're clear on this, Siri, which I know I've just triggered off thousands of devices, but that is now essentially going to be sort of just wrapped over Google.
yeah, basically.
Wow, wow. Now I'm presuming that for the moment, Google probably pay a lot of money to Apple for that.
I'm not sure, honestly. I
Yeah,
think eventually it could be that way in the way that Google pays to be the default in Safari.
on the phone.
But
Yeah.
I think now probably it's reversed, is my guess. My guess is that Google does something very customized for Apple that's a huge customer, that's a big name brand boost for Google Gemini.
Hmm.
But Apple's also like in a bad way. It made the first phone assistant, or one of the first phone assistants, and now that's seen as a joke, and so Apple's catching up. So I think Apple probably is paying Google some money.
Wow. Wow. That would be a turnaround because I remember when Apple launched Apple Intelligence infamously about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And I was there. I was there at the launch in Apple Park, and it looked really interesting. It looked really good, and the idea was really interesting. And the idea was for it to be able to reach down into your different services in your phones.
Exactly.
You know,
Google got there first and debuted something that looks much more capable than Apple Intelligence. Every time I read one of those text messages summaries done by Apple Intelligence, I think it's probably wrong.
yeah, yeah. And so if Google then has this stack and it is clearly at least competent, if not ahead, in the AI race, I wonder where that leaves OpenAI and ChatGPT, which up until fairly recently looked like an absolute juggernaut.
hmm I think they need, in the way that Google already had a bunch of other products existing that it could dump some AI on and revamp with some new sauce like Gmail, OpenAI has to create those new things and
Hmm.
get those going and then layer ChatGPT on top of them and enhance them with that to catch up to Google. And we presume they're going to debut some sort of device that we won't like at the start and then they integrate into our lives, a la those kind of disastrous AI devices last that came out last year.
So this might be the Johnny Ive mystery device, might it?
Mm-hmm.
That yeah.
That's my guess that that's what they want out of
But
2026.
Google already have the phone infrastructure.
Tons.
They
Yeah.
have the stack. OpenAI is still trying to compete to get on the stack. And so I wonder where this leaves Apple, because Apple we think is going to launch a folding phone this year.
Mm-hmm.
But for the large part, other than maybe Apple TV, which continues to be a sort of a rising hit in its stack of services, but the sums involved will be more modest there. Other than just iterating with upgraded phones every year and upgraded iPads and MacBooks, which are all selling very, very well, I wonder what Apple is, how it defines 2026.
I think it's going to be, I think you're right that the folding phone is going to come. I expect them to eventually debut a pair of glasses. And if Meta's not 1,000 years ahead by then maybe then those glasses will probably ride the popularity of the Meta Ray-Bans, which has been quite surprising. They're really popular. I mean, they seem quite fun.
Yeah.
Um, I use smart glasses for running, and they're great.
Just out of
So
curiosity, do you use them mainly for the visual, the camera stuff, or is it for the audio?
it's for audio.
Audio,
I
yeah.
don't. I mean, filming what I'm looking at while I'm running would just be some sidewalks and like
Hmm.
hopefully not, but maybe face first into some grass. Uh,
Yeah. So, okay. So we might get glasses from Apple. We might at some point. But other than that, it's really interesting to me they've slipped behind Google, though, in market cap. I can't remember ever.
It's wild. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember when Apple was the first company to hit $3 trillion, and it seemed unstoppable. I don't think anyone is dethroning the iPhone as the world's most vaunted smartphone anytime soon. I think that business is like it's a little bit harder to break
Hmm.
into that and dominate in the way that like Google is fighting OpenAI. No one is kind of nipping at the heels of Apple in that way, but
Yeah. But
many would want to, I think.
the question with that has been over the last few years: is that quicksand? Is that kind of a trap, or is it? Are they shackles? Because if that is your core business and it's ticking along really nicely and looks like it will tick along really nicely for the next
I
few
was going to
years,
say those are some golden shackles.
yeah, but it means that you're not really motivated to go out and really kind of try and break the mold for anything else. Although they did with the Vision Pro, that hasn't really taken off.
Yeah, do you have one? I don't.
No, and the only people I know, two people who did buy one,
Yeah.
and in both cases, it kind of ended up in a drawer.
Oh
They
gosh.
were really impressed with it. They really liked the experience of it the first time they used it. But one of them tried to bring it on a plane and kept getting ignored by the steward for drinks. So just brought it back and put it into a drawer.
I mean, I
Yeah.
agree with you, and I think this Chinese smartphone makers seem to be just like advancing faster and faster and innovating and adding new features and adding stuff that your phone could do. I'm convinced that like a Xiaomi phone could drive me to the airport at this point.
Yeah.
So it seems like those phone makers are inventing new things that are eroding Apple's advantage. And maybe that's where we'll see iPhone dominance slip first,
You know what's
is
really
in the Chinese
interesting
market.
about those Chinese brands as well is you mentioned Xiaomi, and there is, I believe, Huawei as well. Cars. I mean, I had a look around.
Xiaomi made a car.
Yeah,
Apple couldn't make a car after how many billions of dollars? Like there are kind of varying estimates, but it's tens and tens of billions of dollars. And Xiaomi made a very sleek, like appealing car. Where's
really
Apple's
nice.
car?
Really nice. And also, I mean, I sat in it a couple of months ago at a German
Oh,
car
I'm
event.
jealous.
I mean,
Fun.
really, really nice. But also the price point on it, even with the tariffs, I think it came in at something like, I think it was in the 60s in terms of thousands of euro. Now, cars are
It's
more expensive in
unreal.
Europe than the US. But I think the equivalent in the US, I think it was coming in the 50s or the 60s with a spec. I
It's
saw
amazing.
Marquez Brownlee's review of it, and he was comparing the interior to Rolls Royce, and the tech spec there. Anyway, it's just fascinating that Xiaomi
I
and the
mean,
Chinese are doing it when
imagine
Apple couldn't.
totally. And imagine telling someone that you bought, if you have the option, they're not available. The Chinese cars aren't available in the US
Mm,
because of mega tariffs. And it would seem like outright bans. But imagine telling someone that if you had the option, you bought a Cybertruck instead of like the Xiaomi 9000 car. That would be
mm.
so embarrassing. Um, and I mean, to your point about price, Tesla is selling these extraordinarily high price, like luxury price point cars, when in comparison, the Chinese cars like seem so much more capable
Yeah,
at this point. It's also an interesting point of differentiation. Google's cars probably cost about 100,000 just for the car itself,
right.
and then several 100,000 more for the very advanced like software rig that goes on
So these are
top.
the Waymo taxi, the Waymo
Mhm.
autonomous
They're
cabs.
made with
Yeah,
Jaguar Land
yep.
Rover, and I think it's going to be quite difficult for Waymo to compete on price with the Chinese self-driving cars. So they've started to do this kind of aggressive press posturing of like, we are safer, we have this auditable record. There's not the same data is not available on like the Chinese
Hmm.
um, side. And so you're kind of seeing, as both of them roll out across the world this year, you're seeing them start to kind of differentiate pointedly from one another and say, like, the other is bad.
Yeah, yeah. And where does that then leave Elon Musk's Tesla and autonomy, on which he appears to be betting the ranch really
I
this year,
mean,
given that sales of Teslas have fallen all over the world, really badly
mhm.
in Europe, but also
Yeah.
in the US. But Musk's response to that is, don't worry about that. Don't look over there. Look at autonomy. That's what we're really going to major on.
I mean, he is this kind of master of pivoting investor expectations to say, like, no, the future is coming almost. The other day, he said that going to medical school is worthless because robots will do surgery in 3 years, which I doubt. And I mean, he's made a million broken promises about the future at this point. So I think this is another moment of pivoting investor expectations to financially sustain the present. And whether that future comes to pass becomes sort of immaterial because investors still believe in him in the present. They voted to pay him $1 trillion um, at the end of last year. So I think Tesla's advantage is that its self-driving cars software is much cheaper than Waymo's. So it can perhaps deploy like faster in that way. It has not had major safety disasters in its limited deployment in the US.
Hmm.
I do think Waymo is just light years ahead in the years that it's been deployed and the like kind of knowledge, so to speak, that its cars have accrued of like mapping millions and millions of miles. Um, and it's also on friendlier terms so far with regulators.
Yeah,
And
because
we'll
that's the
see.
big question, really, isn't it, for Tesla's future with autonomy? Whether regulators in any country, and it really looks like it's not going to happen anytime soon in Europe, but in the US, whether Musk's political clout might count for something in persuading regulators to lower what they have had as a reasonably high bar for good safety reasons to
Mhm.
allow Tesla's camera only technology.
Right. And Waymos are set to deploy in London sometime this year, New York City, Washington, D.C. It's kind of beginning this global expansion, which like it's fighting for market share with the Chinese cars. They're deploying in the Middle East this year, but it's almost impossible to imagine Sadiq Khan approving the deployment of Teslas in London.
Yeah.
Like after all of this, after all of the political controversy,
Mm.
it's almost unfathomable.
Or Blake, anywhere in Europe. I mean,
Yeah.
if politics counts for anything in technology rollouts, and we've spent the guts of 25 minutes now suggesting that it has, and it does, then Elon Musk's stock is an historic low in Europe. So maybe that's not important. Maybe he'll maybe the U.S. market. I don't know, but even know about the Canadian market. Maybe the U.S. market is good enough to satisfy his investors. One other robotic story that I'm interested in, though, is Amazon, because I saw a chart recently showing just how many robots Amazon actually have in their facilities and their factories. And it's actually an order of magnitude more than pretty much almost anybody else. I'm wondering whether 2026 might be a big year for robotics in general. And if so, does that mean that, Amazon is particularly well placed here?
I think so. I mean, I think at CES, it seemed like there were quite a lot of demonstrations of robots with varying levels of autonomy. And I think the promise of advancements in AI will eventually be, yeah, the kind of creation of an autonomous brain that you could put in a laundry folding robot. It's one of the
Hmm.
pieces of tech one of my colleagues highlighted as the best of CES.
But I think what Amazon's purpose at the moment is more, industrial and enterprise level
Sure.
stuff. But I'm wondering whether that will branch out or whether we'll see the genre become more expansive this year.
I could see the Amazon deploying a consumer like household robot. They had one, oh, what was it called? Maybe Spiro.
Hmm.
Um, they had one that was kind of, like a fun little companion toy that would like follow you around. It could recognize you and kind of roll with you from room to room.
Didn't they have a drone at one point? An in-house internal domestic drone? I seem to recall they announced it about, I think it was maybe 18 months, 2 years ago. And I think it was a combination of security and other things. And it would deploy if it heard something, if it heard a noise.
I could see it. I think to your point, we will see advancements in robotics. I think we're more likely to see them deployed in industrial settings, like you said, like more likely to see maybe the first fully automated Amazon warehouse that sort of resembles a data center or something with like zero human input. Um,
Hmm.
I'm not sure about. I think the stuff at CES is exciting and interesting, but is perhaps a few years off from
Yeah.
folding my laundry in real life.
Yeah, and that's always been the test, hasn't it? Well, look, we will see if that comes about. But for the moment, Blake Montgomery, who is The Guardian's US tech editor, thank you so much for joining us on the Big Tech Show today. Paul Donegan was on sound, and JJ Clark produced this episode. I'm Adrian Weckler, and you've been listening to or watching the Big Tech Show here in the Irish Independent. And we'll talk to you soon.